Oh, never mind. Okay,
okay, we are live. It says meeting is now streaming live on YouTube. Oh, Coco. Sorry, everyone. Everyone's just had a good workout for their hearts, especially poor Bea. Good grief, that was so unexpected. We've just been talking about how tired Coco is this morning because she's had a very hectic morning, but not too tired to protect the universe from
what?
We are definitely live.
It's all
I can
happening
see
again
us.
For me. Wait there. Oh my god. Okay, right, wait.
We are definitely live on YouTube. So good morning. Hi everyone. Really glad to have you join us this morning. We're going to look at and talk about boundaries and routines, and we thought this was particularly relevant at the moment where you know, everyone is spending a hell of a lot more time with their children than would normally happen at this time of the year. So of course in the summer holidays, yes, there's normally a lot more time together, but this, as we know, are unprecedented, somewhat unscheduled times of togetherness. And so maybe, well, it will be interesting if anyone's able to join us this morning to hear whether people are more moving towards having boundaries and routines because it's tricky to manage so much, or if they started off with them really firmly and then let them go, or if you've never had them at all, or so that's what we're going to explore this morning. Ta-da! Oh, Bea, are you okay? Poor Bea.
But yeah, I am okay, and she's settling down now. But I think at the point where she kind of went, yeah, I think she might have also farted because I feel like I've been sitting in a fog of dog fart as well. Are you coming up?
Wonderful.
Come on, you come back up again.
We love.
Do you need boundaries and routine?
She's like, what are you talking about? Doing my job. Saving everyone at every level.
Saving everyone at every level.
Yeah, my dogs always used to bark, and it's really hard, but they're just like, it's my dog, it's my job. What, you want a dog that doesn't bark? Okay, so when the robbers come, I'll just lie here and go, oh no, I'm a dog that doesn't bark. Okay.
The trouble is with Coco though, is if the robbers came and they thought I will take my chances because I know what staffies are like, she'd be going bonkers. They'd come through the door and then she'd just roll over and be like, tickle my tummy, tickle my tummy. She wouldn't go for them. She just wants to love everyone.
My Staffy was the sweetest little dog, but she was very protective of us, of her little group. So I think she would have a bit of a nip actually, or she would have, or she wouldn't now, but she would have. But she was so sweet. She was like the most affectionate dog I've ever known in my life, and I've had a few dogs along the way. So
maybe she would. Who knows, Coco, what you would do?
No, but we love her.
We do love her, yes. Anyway, boundaries and routine.
Yeah. So, where shall we start? Actually, I might just start with talking about schools and early years a bit, because I have. Oh.
No, go on. Yeah, go on. That's fine. No, yeah, go for it. Yeah. I'm just in my head. I'm like, boundaries and routine, schools and early years. I'm like, where's the connection? You go for it. Let's go for it. Where's the connection?
In my mind, well, just because this week I've been in my head trying not to rant, but mildly somewhat irritated. I got contacted by some wonderful person who works in, I believe, in a school and is a lead for the early years. And she was very distraught because she doesn't do all this rewards, consequences, boundaries, in her setting. She's worked very hard to establish a very engaged, connected, holding setting where there aren't rules that if you break them, bad stuff happens. You don't get a smiley face for conforming or whatever, or being able to conform. She's worked super hard and is very wedded to this. But unfortunately, completely out of her control, things are about to massively change whenever schools restart. And she was very distressed. and said, is there anything you can send me through to just show that having very firm boundaries, which you would think in a school or an earlier setting sounds very sensible, to be honest. And that's what I get, you know, you see a lot on social media is people really advocating that there will be anarchy, chaos and everything if there are not very clear boundaries that the children have to follow, and there will be trouble if they don't, and all that kind of thing. So I sent her through a big article full of research, because she said, you know, maybe if I can show them research then, but I generally have found that just showing people research doesn't change anything, sadly.
Is that an article that we can share in the resources under
yes,
this episode?
It is. Yeah, it's Alfie Kohn, who is probably the most famous, thank goodness for Alfie Kohn, he's a researcher, and he's been talking for like 1,000 million years about why we don't need this stuff, even though it sounds as if we do. And I don't know if maybe he's been a teacher as well, or he's a teacher, I'm not sure, but very loud in education, particularly in America, saying, you know, how it's not okay. And I keep feeling as if I should, I don't know, like really go to town on this, because as parents, we don't go on training per se, and we are not paid money for what we do, but we might want to figure this stuff out. But if I am being really honest, I feel that if we're professionals, and I don't mean individuals, I mean the leaders of professional settings, and there is all this amazing evidence, and it's not new evidence and new research, but there's neuroscience, there's studies that have been done that show not only why we shouldn't be doing it, but how harmful it is to have this very conditional, if you don't do this, there will be consequences, is to children. Then I feel that it's not okay. It's actually not okay to do something we know is going to harm a child. So so even, I mean, I kind of brought that in because I thought, so some people might be thinking, well, okay, at home I can maybe do this, but of course when they go to a setting, there have to be boundaries. So just to challenge us that little bit more, that this isn't just about what we do when we're raising our children, but maybe we want to start inviting those who also care for our children to come on this journey with us. There we go. Is that a good link?
Yeah, that's great. And I think, you know, there are educational settings that, you know, are actively working in a safe and healthy way that supports our children's well-being. You know, if I think about Steiner schools or even possibly Montessori, I think, you know, that I don't think they use kind of boundaries and things like that. And it's very interesting because where my parenting journey started, I was all about boundaries and limits. I mean, you know, routines have never worked for me. I just can't do routines. I love rhythm. I love having a rhythm to my days. I love having the rituals within that rhythm. They're almost like the hooks that I hang the rhythm of my day on. But I've never, ever I just can't bear a routine. I cannot bear a routine. Anyway, but I used to be very, very big on boundaries and limits when I started out as a parent. And now, you know, and this happened when I guess my eldest son was almost 3, or maybe a little bit older, as part of my journey. Maybe he was around 3. And I started to realize that, you know, in general, boundaries are purely like a parenting or educational or whatever. They're a tool used by adults to control children. That's all a boundary generally is when used by most people. It's like, this is the boundary, and if you cross it, there's going to be a punishment, and if you stick to it, then possibly there's going to be a reward. I don't know, but that's really what my experience of seeing boundaries in action, hearing other parents use boundaries with their kids, it's just all about control, and it's using that control to try and meet the parents' needs at the cost of the child's well-being. Now, like you said, like, you know, loads of parents and educators, I guess, don't know the research, but it's frustrating because the research is there. it's not actually difficult to find, you know. I mean, I know, I mean, you can go to Alfie Cohen's website, which has got articles and research and things on, and his book Published by Rewards and his book Unconditional Parenting. They're both brilliant. But I think most parents and some educators probably don't want to read the research because they don't want to have to find a different way. You know, it's much easier for them to say, no, well, we, you know, the children need boundaries. It's always the children need boundaries, rather than, quite frankly, if you fucking owned it, what you would say is, I need these boundaries because I don't have a bigger skill set for managing this situation. So actually, I need to control the kids. That's really what's going on. The kids don't need the boundaries at all. But I think a lot of parents and educators probably don't want to access the research because they don't want to be in a situation where either they make an informed choice to find a different way, or they make an informed choice to stay where they are, being informed that what they're doing is potentially damaging. I mean, I have had parents say to me, you know, no, Bea, I don't want to know. I don't want to know any more about this, because they don't want to have to change. And I sometimes get really distressed, you know, listening to some of these boundaries being put in place. And I think also knowing that, you know, I was there at one time, so I know what that is like. To have to put these were you ever a kind of parent that used boundaries and limits?
Well, yes. I mean, I don't think I thought of them that way at all, because I didn't have any language in my head for what the hell I was doing. But yeah, I definitely I know I did. I know I tried consequences. Jose always laughs at me. He's like, oh, do you remember when you did such and such? What were you doing? I don't know, darling. What was I doing? But yeah, no, I definitely did. But we both hated them. We both hated boundaries. It used to cause us so much distress. But then I didn't know what else to do. And I'd been brought up with very, very rigid boundaries, like to the point of, you know, I couldn't cope in the real world at all, and hence it made me very vulnerable. So, you know, then terrible things happened to me, because we think this is such the interesting thing, is that we think if we are very clear with children, we're very clear, and you know, you always hear this thing, don't you, Bea, where people say, but then they'll know right from wrong. I know. You know, if we're clear and they know, they have to learn how to behave, they have to learn what good behavior is, they have to learn, and you just hear the same stuff. It's like whenever Bea and I do endless interviews about this and about smacking and all the rest of it, people believe that, you know, might is right, and that ultimately, and then I see people and they put things like, well, no, we don't have any of that stuff, we're gentle parenting, or with this or with that, but of course if they do such and such, and I'm like, well, then you do, you know, it's yes, but we do expect them to be kind, and we do, you know, there are limits, there are and I think that's actually in some ways is kind of more confusing for children, because it's all right until, well, and now it's not all right, is it? It's like, oh, but everything else was fine, but I did that one thing because I'm a child and I'm struggling, and that's the one thing that you do not find acceptable about me, therefore that's a boundary. FYI.
And it's not even that the child does something because they're struggling. I mean, you know, they may well be struggling and therefore act out in a certain behavior, but sometimes it's just that the child just is excited to explore their world and experience something, or, you know, like, children are, not all children, I know every child is different, but, you know, many children, they want to get into things, they want to climb things, they want to touch things, they want to go off and, you know, with whatever wonderful imaginative things going on in their head, you know, just because they're in that place of just being in complete flow of what it means to be a small human being exploring the world. And then suddenly you know, this boundary comes down on them, you know, I told you not to go out of my sight. Like, what kind of child is meant to be aware of
keep that?
No, I mean, like, I struggle to kind of, you know, to be aware of myself in terms of other people, in terms of can they see me or not. I mean, how's a small child meant to be able to do that? It just, you know, there are so many times when boundaries, get used in this way to support a parent or an educator to have power over a child. And to me, that is the crux of both the boundaries and the routines, is that when used in these kind of controlling ways, it's all about having power over the child. So a routine that is imposed by an adult automatically has power over the child. It also puts the child in a very difficult situation, because if that routine doesn't actually support the child and there's no flexibility to it, so let's say lunch is at 12 and the child maybe isn't actually that hungry at 12, and so they don't eat it all, and then by 12:45 they're asking for food. It's like, well, no, we have lunch at 12, your food was there, you should have eaten it when it was available. Fuck off. Sorry, I think that's the second time I've sworn, but quite frankly, fuck off. Like if your child is hungry, feed your child.
But again, it comes from all this fear, doesn't it, and things that have been handed down. This rigidity, this pure rigidity, which comes from a place of fear. When you aren't so scared, and it's fine and it's understandable to be scared as a parent. I definitely have been, and even though I'm parenting a 29-year-old, I still am sometimes. I see choices he might be making, and I'm still scared. Oh, he's meeting his uni friends in London. I'm definitely scared. I know what that means. But I could contact him and put a load of negativity, and I mean, obviously I can't put any boundaries around a 29-year-old meeting his friends, but I don't, because I think, shut up, Jane, just send that boy love and light, and he will have a great time, and whatever happens. So it should never be about my needs. And for me, which is what you're saying, Bea, if we really are focusing on the child and the children, and we see a child, we've set a boundary or a rule, and good luck if you have, then we're setting every child up to fail or to be so miserably stressed that those are really their two options. They're either going to be, and I know, I mean, going back to schools and earlier settings, I have parents say to me, my child is the best behaved child, whatever the hell that means, poor little lamb. But
laying down the trauma on the inside.
They every Sunday night when they're going back to school, they get really scared that they're going to get the red traffic light, or they're going to get sent to the head teacher. And of course that's a logical versus emotional response, because logically they literally do everything right, but their fear is, and it's like, I think I've said this before, it's like the shoplifting thing. As soon as you see the security people, you start thinking, oh my god, where did I put that thing I had in my hand? Did I have a moment where I was a bit absent? I've just shoved it in my pocket because I was trying to
see police at an airport and you think, oh my god,
thinking, I don't take drugs, I don't have any drugs, but what if I accidentally do? It's like, okay, calm down, you don't take drugs, you idiot. So for a child, this is what we then set them up for, and if in our homes we are saying everything is fine until you cross the line of the thing that you won't be able to remember because you're a child, unless you're so rigidly scared that that's all you can focus on, then we kind of robbing children of the essence of what childhood should be, which is what you're talking about, Bea, is that children, so when I was saying struggling, I mean as in struggling to keep you happy and follow your thing, because they're just being children. They just haven't complied with the stuff because
and it's not a child's job to keep their parent happy.
Ever. And I mean, the way I always think about, so I'm not a fan of any rigidity about anything. Can't think of anything. Well, maybe just that I get fed, but no. Pretty rigid about that, auntie. But I do believe that children with input, their own input, some children really enjoy structure, so they like to know that we get up roughly at the same time. If, you know, we have some breakfast together, then maybe we do some yoga, or we go walk the dog, or we go. So it has a kind of rhythm to the day. Because I mean, I must admit, I like a rhythm, but it doesn't, if something suddenly happens and it all goes sideways, the whole point is to be that grounded parent so that you can hold your child through. Yes, we were supposed to FaceTime nanny now, but such and such has happened. And what and how is that for you? What's going on? And, you know, so that you can hold them through the wobbles. Because if you have a strict routine and we have to stick to it, well, when you go into real life is not like that. Things go wrong all the time. Things go, well, look at the current situation. The whole essence of being a human being is having that flexibility and thinking, okay, yeah, I mean, I roughly get up around the same time, unless I definitely don't have any clients or calls, and then I may just not set my alarm, but my system will wake up, and then I roughly do the same thing because my system just enjoys that.
I'm the same. I think that's what I mean when I talk about loving rhythm.
Yeah.
You know, like I have these little rituals. So like when how I make my tea, for example, or, you know, there are lots of things that I have a rhythm. And you mentioned, you know, some children really do like structure, and I absolutely agree. You know, there's you know, the breadth of variety within humans. I mean, it's huge. So you have some people, children or adults, who really thrive and desire a lot of structure. And you have others who are like, absolutely not. I require and absolutely need freedom and autonomy. You know, so you hear people saying like, you know, well, children need routines or children need structure. And I think, well, no, like some children need that structure in a big way. Other children really need a lot more fluidity. But there's a way that we can work with every child as an individual in front of us. Even if we've got three, you know, I mean, you've got one child, I've got two children, some people have 3, 4 and on. Even when you have multiple children, it's still possible to respond to each child. I am only speaking as a parent of 2 children, but I do think it's possible to respond to the needs of each child, so that when a child does need a lot more structure and wants to know what time does this happen, then what's happening, that, you know, we can do our best to create our days to support that, whilst also when we have another child who wants more fluidity and, you know, wants to decide when they're ready for their breakfast, you know, because I mean, I get up and I eat. If I don't get up and eat, I can't really do a lot in my day, to be honest, unless I go out and do exercise. I can get up, exercise, then come back and eat. But otherwise, I get up and I eat. My eldest son, not ready to eat at all when he gets up. It takes him ages.
Mine used to be like that.
Ages and ages before he's ready to eat. My youngest son eats constantly, you know, so it, you know, everyone is different. And so I think the children who want that way more fluidity, they want to have a more responsive way of living, that can still fit alongside a child or an adult who wants and needs much more structure. I think the important thing within that is that the parent is tuned in to what is it that I need, and where my needs differ to my child, what do I need to put in place so that I have the additional resources to be able to also give my child what they need where it's different to me.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
No, I mean, that's been my biggest learning on this whole journey of raising a human being and working with many children and working with parents, is it's all about the adult's ability to be grounded, to ground themselves, to come back into this moment, and to have their own internal flexibility without feeling overwhelmed. And that sounds so simple, and yet it's taken me many years. And you know, to reinforce what you're saying, Bea, I mean, I was, for about 3.5 years, I think, maybe a bit longer, I was a childminder and a respite foster care at the same time. So in the summer holidays, I would often have from 8 in the morning till whatever time they got picked up in the afternoon, evening, 8 children. That was just pretty standard. Sometimes it would be a foster child who was just staying for a brief time. And we, you know, very much it was about integrating them. The children were very sweet. But they were all different ages, sizes, shapes, everything. And it really was about, okay, knowing, so this child, they need to know that we are going to the park at 3. But of course, sometimes with 8 children, one of them has just, you know, done a giant poo in their nappy. So the 8-year-old that needs to go to the park, I'm going to have to hold him through the process of, we're now going to be 15 minutes late while I change the baby. So it's about, it is very hard, but it is possible to hold everyone, but you need to be held yourself.
Absolutely. One of the things, sorry,
that's fine, go on.
One of the things that I have really started to understand about myself since I've had my autism diagnosis is that for me there are the umbrella is predictability, but that predictability as an umbrella, there are 3 aspects to that. One is reliability, one is familiarity, and one is consistency. And I'm aware that although I can have a very flexible way of living through life, I can be quite spontaneous on my own terms. I struggle to adapt to someone else's spontaneity, but you know, but actually for me, I have quite a high need for reliability, familiarity, and consistency, i.e. predictability. But when that's not available to me, I am aware that I either might need to ask someone else to support me in that situation, or I'm learning or have learned how to support myself in that, so that I can be present with how uncomfortable it feels for me when we had a plan to do this and now that plan's having to change. And I find that really difficult. And so I, as an adult, now that I understand this about myself, because I've only known I'm autistic for a short time, but I'm now learning how to go, okay, this is why I'm suddenly having a strong emotional reaction, because we had a plan, the plan has had to change. I can rationally see it all, but that doesn't,
but it's the emotional stuff, isn't it? That's
so then I can be present with that emotional response. And often what I will do, because this works for me, is try and find someone I can talk to and share that with. If Green, my husband's around, he's amazing at holding space for me and supporting me through these sorts of situations. And I'm a 42-year-old woman, and I still need that support from others at times, and I still have to actively support myself through that. So when you're talking about a child who, you know, does thrive on that kind of routine, that has that strong need for predictability, you know, more than ever, they really need our support to hold that space for them. Not to suddenly say, right, everyone else, Jack needs us to go to the park at 3 because you know it's really important to Jack, so come on, I'll change the nappy at the park, everyone's got to get out the door now. You know, we really have to learn, and parents will say to me, what does it mean to hold space? We have to learn to hold space, to walk with, like, it's not even like leading the child through, it's walking with the child through these experiences. And one of the things that Green will say to me is, he'll just say, you know, do you need a minute? Interestingly, often the minute he says to me, do you need a minute? I'm like, no, I'm okay. But because he's offering me that extra space, that's enough for me to go, actually, no, I've got this most of the time.
And that's so interesting, because when you said that to me, I found that very, not because you were saying it, but very annoying. Do you need a minute? I would receive as a sort yourself out, because that's how it's been said to me, obviously. So as soon as you said it, I thought, oh, that's interesting. I've had the opposite. I could feel the reaction in my body of,
interesting,
you know, you need a minute, sort yourself out. So
that's interesting. I mean, yeah, that's interesting.
That's
isn't that brilliant though for this conversation?
Literally, that's what happened. I was like, oh right, so I need a minute, do I? That's what was going on inside of me.
Yeah, so you can have two children in front of you.
Yeah.
Who experience, one child experiences something, one of your parenting techniques or whatever in a really positive way, and your other child is like, no, fuck you.
And it was fear. It was fear. I could feel it. It was fear. Oh, you're going to abandon me.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I remember.
That's why it's so.
For each other.
That's why it's so. I was going to say it's so tricky. I mean, everything potentially about raising children seems and definitely feels tricky. And that's why Bea and I keep talking about, being able to notice ourselves. Oh, that has made me feel like this, so I need to take a breath, because this is my emotion, this is my feeling about this. It's not my child's. And if I can just notice it, and it's again not simple or easy to do, I can notice it. I can it's almost like treading water. I often feel like, you can underneath, and just be with it. And then say to the child, it's okay, or are you okay? And there can be a lot of pausing. I think we often think we have to flick through into, okay, so the routine's gone out the window. I know they're not going to like that. So how do I manage this? Rather than, okay, I need to just bring myself back to safety so I can be safely with them, and then let's see where this goes.
And that brings us back again to it being about us as parents identifying what our needs are, and having the skills to be able to meet our needs either in the moment or making changes in our life so that we're constantly topping up whatever it is that we need, and also being aware of our ability as adults to have that delayed gratification, like knowing in this moment, God, I really need connection, and I just need to be able to talk to my friend, and and then going, okay, I'm going to send a quick text to my sister and see if she's available for a chat this evening. And we can know that that's coming, like our need is going to be met, but it's going to be met in the future. And a child can't do that. A child is not responsible for meeting their own needs. A child is not responsible for any ability to kind of hold that understanding of, in the future I'm going to have this. I mean, I used to make this mistake all the time. I was the mum who we'd go out. This is when my kids were little, and there were quite a few of us mums. We'd go out with our kids to parks or swimming and stuff. And I was classically the mum who always forgot to bring food and drink, to the point that other mums used to bring extra so that my kids could have food and drink. And I would find myself, I'd gone out with my boys on my own, and I might have remembered, I don't know, a couple of boxes of raisins or a banana or something. And then I would be aware that they were hungry. Maybe they told me they were hungry, or I would go, oh shit, they're really hungry. And I'd be like, okay, well, look, we're going to get food as soon as we get home. Just wait until we get home. And they couldn't do it. Like, I could do that. I could be like, okay, it's going to take, I don't know, 40 minutes to get home. As soon as I get home, I can just shove a banana down me, or whatever. I could do that for myself as an adult. It didn't take away any of the struggles I was having because I was hungry, but I could at least know that was happening. And I used to kind of almost require that of my boys. And I look back now and I think, what was I thinking? I mean, I was just doing my best, but there was no way my boys could comprehend the fact that, oh, it's okay, we're going home now and there's going to be food at home, and that's going to take about 40 minutes. So I just need to keep that in mind while I'm experiencing
all these painful feelings I have in my stomach will pass. That doesn't work for me as an adult, if I'm honest, but and again, that's a different relationship, isn't it, with food and eating and the emotions. And but what you're describing, Bea, so I was literally there with you in the park, is is that they don't have the capacity, and our expectations, and that goes back to boundaries. They don't have the capacity to not cross the boundary at some point. And you know, and children who, well, I mean, I don't know if anybody has a child who they never cross a boundary, but that's not, I don't know what the best word is to use. That's unusual, because children are, exactly as Bea's talking about, impulsive. They don't have the impulse control part of their brain developed. Most adults don't have it very well developed, which is why, you know, it's hard not to have a second chocolate biscuit or a third or a fourth or a fifth. And so we set these boundaries where we might say no snacks in between meals, or we might say, I'm trying to think of boundaries now. No one goes upstairs between 10 and 12, because that's when we're doing whatever schooling we're doing, or education. No one does, you know, there's whatever that, and you can agree them, and the children will often agree because they want to keep you happy, and they'll be like, oh, I used to, years ago when I worked with parents, before I knew any of this stuff, I'd say, oh, you know, have a house meeting and just sit down together and let the children have input into your rules. I thought that was a lovely thing to do. But then I realized, well, it's still the same thing, isn't it? Because the children are going to comply, and they might come up with all sorts of things. But anytime you have that situation, then you have to have a consequence when they've crossed the thing, even if they created the thing. And then you're in that miserable space on loop again, and you're always setting them up to fail.
I was supporting a parent just this week whose two sons, my client and her husband were feeling like their sons were old enough really to help around the house a lot more and things like this. So, you know, they had a discussion with their sons, and the sons went away, and they came up with their own lists of the things that they were happy to help with. Great idea, brilliant. They've decided that, so they're obviously going to do it. First day, brilliant, both did it. Second day, no. And so, you know, my client was like, well, you know, why aren't they, you know, why can't they do it just 2 days in? You know, these were things they decided. And I just said, I said, wow, for me, just hearing what those kids put on their list, I feel overwhelmed at the thought that I would have to try and do those things every day. You know, like, they've made a list to the best of their ability with what they know at the ages that they are. They're 9 and 10, 9 and 11. That doesn't mean to say that that list is an appropriate list for them. That's a list that, you know, they've said, okay, this is what I've come up with. And you can say to them, okay, wonderful, let's see how it goes. And then when you notice that, you know, it's not going, you know, in the way they thought, then you can say, oh, it seems like this list isn't, you know, isn't actually the best list. It seems like it's hard for you to do those things. You know, shall we change it? You could start that conversation, because the other thing about boundaries is that boundaries get put in place as this kind of, this is the boundary. It is now here. It does not move. And actually, we have an opportunity every single day with our children to do a lot of movement, because one day, you know, a child may have the capacity to do, I don't know what, but one day a child might be really happy to help lay the table and make their bed and, you know, unload the dishwasher. And then on another day, they just might not have that capacity at all. And so you can either fight your reality of your child not having the capacity for it, and then create conflict, disconnection, etc. Or you can just flow with how that changing reality is changing all the time, and be present with your child in that moment. Parents seem to, or not parents necessarily, adults seem to very quickly kind of forget that children are human beings. You know, as adults, we acknowledge that we might have gotten out of bed on the wrong side. We might be feeling a bit flat today because, you know, we had one glass too many.
Put it all over Facebook.
You know, so for us, it's like that ever-changing sense of our energy levels, our emotional resilience, all that kind of stuff. That seems okay for us as adults, but the minute our children start to exhibit any kind of fluctuation in their capacity, then they clearly need stronger boundaries, or
well,
they
and that's
need
what people
more
get
of a
told,
routine.
don't they? Poor parents. I feel so sad for parents, because there's always a queue forming behind them, generally of relatives, but sometimes other parents, to tell them, well, and the reason is that you just have not got clear boundaries, you're not firm enough with them, you're not. And you know, so I mean, when Bea and I are doing this kind of work with parents, I'm sure you experience it just as much as me, Bea. It's holding the parents through. It's almost like Teflon coating them, because they say to me, but I'm getting so much criticism because my children didn't sit at the table when we, well, no one's going out for dinner now, but for an example, when we were with the family, and then everybody was messaging me afterwards or telling me to my face then, or, you know, you could see the look, or, and there's this like staying in this space of, and you know, I was just thinking what you were saying then about boundaries, and I was like, I set myself boundaries all the time, and guess what? I don't stick to any of them. Literally,
It's like New Year's resolutions.
Oh, ridiculous. The most hilarious thing at the moment is, since I've been living in my own space, in my other space where I lived for 20 something years, I had a dishwasher, and I loved my dishwasher. I loved it, literally. And I knew coming to a house without one was going to be a bit of a challenge, but I was like, do you know what, Jane? Blah, blah. Man, it doesn't matter what boundaries I set myself about washing up. It doesn't work because I hate it. And logically, I know it's 2 minutes. Well, it's more than 2 flipping minutes. That's the problem. You just put water in a sink. You do all this stuff. That's my logical brain. And you're a grown-up, Jane, and it's disgusting not to wash up as soon as you use something. I wouldn't show you my kitchen at the moment. But so logically, as a fully formed, wouldn't say fully fledged adult, I have set myself a clear boundary, and my daughter-in-law thinks it's hilarious / disgusting. And she's like, okay, just wash as you go. And I'm like, yeah, Georgie, I'm going to wash as I go now. I did it the other day and it felt really good. And she's like, brilliant. Okay, wash as you go. Lasted a day. I have never done it again. I set myself boundaries around, actually not around food, that's a lie. All sorts of things. But mostly 99.9% of the time, with my fully formed brain, with my big intellect, with blah, 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 it means nothing, because my emotions, and children are even more emotionally dominant than we are, my emotions always trump my logic. 99.9% of the time. And children are just walking bundles of emotion and impulse. Not their, you know, that's the joy of them, actually. But for us, it makes life hard because they haven't followed the rules, and our anxiety, we just want them to, you know, you said, we understand now, don't we? You're not going to do that again. You're not going to push your brother again, are you? Because, you know, then you have to lose or you get your whatever. It makes us feel better, but ultimately it destroys the relationship with our children.
Yeah. And if boundaries worked, then, you know, you would only need to use them once.
Yeah, and I had 8 million boundaries when I was a child, and guess what?
I think New Year's resolutions, when you started talking about, you know, the boundaries you set for yourself, and I instantly thought of New Year's resolutions, that just shows you how, as adults, you know, we're doing it en masse. So this wonderful energy of everybody setting intentions to change certain aspects of the way they live in order to exhibit behaviors or life experiences or whatever more akin to what they want to experience. And it, you know, it just doesn't, we don't manage it, even though we're all setting these plans together to start going to the gym or to stop eating sugar, or I don't know, whatever it is.
I don't know, never do
but
them.
I don't do them either, but you know, like but you know how ineffective they are. And that is us doing it for ourselves from our own motivation, and we still cannot do it. And we don't, I mean, well, okay, I know some people do then punish themselves, but you know, as a general rule, we don't
internally
then
we do, though, don't you think? In our internal, as you were saying that, I was like, and then we internally verbally punish ourselves and criticize ourselves and denigrate ourselves, which is what was said and done to us when we were little, because we failed, you know, well, I knew you wouldn't do that, and now you've gone and spent all that money on a gym membership. That's so wasteful. You do this every time, and at the end of the day, you're just bloody lazy and you've got no discipline. And then we punish ourselves. I certainly used to massively, by my internal narrative, which was gifted to me.
Yeah. One of the ways that I have changed my understanding around boundaries, because I think there is a place where, you know, boundaries are essential to our safety and well-being, but it's on a very personal level. So for me, my understanding of boundaries now is very much around supporting me to stay in alignment with my values around, well, my values in general, but my values or my resources around my time, my energy, my physical space, because it's absolutely appropriate for me to have a physical boundary that says, you know, I'm not comfortable with you crossing that, or a boundary around my time that says, you know, if someone asks me, oh, B, can you help me with this? Then I'm able to say, I can't, no, I can't help you with that right now because I don't have the time, or, you know, I can help you with this part of it, and I can give you an hour, but that's it. Or boundaries around my energy. So with my boys, that might be me saying to them, guys, I'm feeling really tired and I just really need you guys to keep the noise down a bit so I can have a nap. It's, you know, it's about, those boundaries are about me and me knowing what is right for me to keep me in alignment so that I can thrive. And with my sons, that's what I have tried to support them to do, is for them to establish their own boundaries. And there's a lot of flexibility in these boundaries, but for them to establish their boundaries around keeping themselves in alignment with who they are and how they want to live. So it's not about boundaries to control other people. My boundaries haven't been to control my children. My boundaries have really been about me saying, this is great for me, this is not great for me. Or you there, you know, this is your boundary, you do not come past here, but you over there, you can come right in here, you know, that kind of, because I don't want, you know, for people watching this, I don't want them to walk away thinking, oh, well, I've got to just get rid of all boundaries. I think for me, it's the key point is that conventionally and traditionally, boundaries in parenting and education have been about controlling children to make things supposedly easier for the adult. Whereas actually, boundaries, if we take away that control aspect, boundaries are something that are really healthy and appropriate for all humans to have, so that they are living a life that is absolutely right for them, and that they live their life according to who they are, what they want to achieve, what they want to experience, what feels good for them. And they make choices according to that. Whereas as a general, I think we tend to raise our children that for as long as you live at home with me and I'm raising you, you exist to keep me happy. And then suddenly as an adult, you're supposed to be able to make great choices for yourself.
Exactly.
And you don't have the skills to do it.
No, and literally I'm a living testament to that. You know, there was so many boundaries and rules and so much discipline when I was a child. You know, bless my little parents' heart, they were doing their best. And the same in school, went to Catholic schools all the way through. So very strict, very harsh. It didn't stop me joining all the other girls who were trying to have a fag down the thing. I mean, I just did it in total utter fear of my life, that if I got caught. So as an adult, or a young adult, I went completely, I was not in any way equipped for real life. So left home at 18 and then was doing real life. So I just drank and I partied and I had no boundaries because I didn't have any internal boundaries. This is the problem with boundaries that are imposed on you. When you break free of the people who did that to you, which is what I did, you don't know how to manage yourself at all. You don't know who to let near you, who not to let near you, because you haven't built that internal framework and that inside model of exactly what Bee's talking about. Let me just check, does it feel okay for this person to come near me or touch my body? Do I really want to go with those people who are talking about experimenting with whatever? Do I really want to? I mean, you know, I lived in Switzerland for a long time, and I used to go with all the crazy young guys skiing, and I couldn't ski. And I nearly killed myself. I don't know how many times. I mean, they'd grown up their whole life skiing, but I didn't have a boundary around or a curiosity around, is this safe? Is it okay for me to say no and they'll still like me? Had nothing. I mean, how I am not dead is beyond comprehension. So the only reason I'm rambling on like this is because I had so many boundaries in my life, and in no way, shape or form did it prepare me to step outside my front door safely, ever. And it's taken me the whole of my life into my 50s to start understanding myself. And exactly what Bee's saying, check with myself. Does this feel okay? Actually right now this doesn't feel okay. So it's all right for me to say thank you so much for that, but I don't really want to, you know, join you in that right now, or I'm not interested in collaborating with you, or whatever. And Bea and I, we do this, don't we? We check in with each other around how we work together. And then we respect if one of us is saying, oh, you know what, no, maybe not that now. And that's all about us discovering and feeling safe to have our own boundaries and to discuss them. And that, when you can get to that point with children, is, it's a joy.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's a joy.
I've just seen we've got a comment on YouTube which we can respond to in a moment. But I mean, imagine if you and I set boundaries for each other. Like, you know, if I said, Jane, this is the boundary with our podcast, you know, you have to do it for 12 weeks. And if you at any point don't record a podcast with me, then
wouldn't we?
Horrible. Let's see. Okay, Hannah. Hello, Hannah.
Hi, Hannah.
Hannah says, surely no one washes as they go. Some people do their washing up as they go.
Not in this house, Hannah.
I do on occasion manage to wash as I go.
I dream of it, but
amazing.
It does. But
if I showed you my kitchen now, piles of washing up. Also, Hannah says, isn't it that changes are difficult because making changes is not a cognitive exercise? The unconscious material that stops the change needs to be processed. Yes, exactly. But this is why with children, we're expecting them to change their behavior according to our boundaries, and they can't, because those behaviors are not cognitive behaviors. That every behavior is a communication. It has a positive intention on a subconscious level to communicate something to us as adults to help make their world right. So basically to express struggle or upset, or to articulate that a need isn't being met. So to take a child who is behaving in a way that you as the adult don't like, and to try and put a boundary in place so that they'll behave differently, is expecting them to somehow have that cognitive ability to behave differently, which they can't have. So that's why I kind of jumped into the New Year's resolutions, because it's operating from that same place. You can't just make those changes, even if, we as adults, when we make New Year's resolutions, we're coming from a place of, this is what we want for ourselves. It's even harder for a child to adhere to a boundary, because they're somehow trying to come from a place of, I have to do this because this is what my mum wants, this is what my dad wants. Yeah, and if we can't make the changes that we think will make us happy, how on earth are our children meant to make changes? They're not responsible for keeping us happy at all. And equally, if we feel disappointed or frustrated, that's not our children's responsibility either.
So I wonder if we should do some in, like, what do we normally do, tips, or I don't know, something like that.
Yes, we also do normally take a moment just to let people know that if, as a result of listening to this podcast, they want to reach out to either of us to work with us, or they want to buy our products, we normally let them know how to do that. So why don't we do that first, and then we can share top tips around boundaries and routines.
Okay, so I work with people predominantly exclusively online now. It was always predominantly, now it's exclusively online. I coach parents one-to-one. I give a lot of insights into the why do children do this and where does that come from. And then I help parents do what Bea and I, have been talking about, upgrade yourself, because we all parent from how we were parented as children, even though we don't realize it. So we react to things and we get troubled by things that were the things that we generally got into trouble for when we were children. So I very much work with parents to identify what that is, remove it, replace it with something that's going to serve you and your children now. And then I've got the Crisis to Calm Parents program running at the moment. And I think that is it. All my books are online. Yeah, that's all I can remember usefully.
I also work with clients one-to-one. I work with an energy therapy called emotional freedom technique. And I work with not actually just parents, I work with adults who are aware that, things that are left over from their childhood are preventing them from living the life they want to live, whether that's relationships, romantic relationships, how they deal with food, their work, etc. But so I work with adults, many of whom are parents, but not exclusively. And we, using emotional freedom technique, we kind of just clear and unpick those things that are left over in us. So for example, when I talked earlier about how beneficial it is for me when I'm struggling with an unexpected transition and Green says to me, would you like a minute? And that for me suddenly supports me to move forward. And Jane was like, oh no, it was like an instant fear took over her. So I work with clients with something, something that can seem as innocuous as just saying, do you need a minute? And that is left over from their childhood and it's impacting them in their life today. I also work with emotional freedom technique to support clients with much bigger things such as abuse and neglect and loss of parents and things like that. So that's my one-to-one work, and I do that particularly in my work with parents to support them to find joy, peace and connection with their children, because often it's that stuff in us that's getting triggered, that's getting in the way of us having the parenting experience with our kids that we desire. I also am the creator of the Yes Parenting Digital Pack, which is an online resource. It's set out in a very structured way to create like a course, if you want to do it as a course, or something you can dip in and out of. And once you buy it, you have lifetime access to it. And all of these things that we've talked about, so Jane's one-to-one work and her, remind me the name of your mini course?
Crisis to Calm Parents program.
Crisis to Calm Parents program. Working with me one-to-one, or signing up for the Yes Parenting Digital program, we are going to put the links under this video. You can also subscribe to this channel so that you know when we go live next time. You can do that somewhere, or maybe you can do it. I think there might be a circle on the video at some point. You can click on that, I think. So yes, so that's how you can connect with us. Let's just check if Hannah's come back with any. No. So let's give top tips. We normally do 2 each. So I think for me, the first top tip when it comes to boundaries and routines is to give yourself permission to acknowledge where you may have been setting boundaries or imposing routines to make things easier for yourself. Not in order to judge yourself or shame yourself or beat yourself up, but just to come to that place of honesty and taking responsibility. I think it's a very empowering thing when we're able to go, flip, I totally do this in order to help myself. Just starting from a place of acknowledgement and taking responsibility will, I believe, have a really powerful impact on how you then move forwards, exploring this with your children. But I think you have to acknowledge it first, even if it's as simple as recognizing that, maybe there's a boundary, or part of the routine is that, we all have breakfast before 9 a.m. or something. you know, just recognizing that actually that maybe doesn't support one or more of your children who aren't ready to eat breakfast before 9 a.m. My second tip would be to, and you know, Jane and I, we talk about this a lot. So in some ways I might be repeating what we've all said before, but you know, taking moments throughout the day just to become familiar with your own emotional state. Now, your emotional state is the feelings, but your emotional state is also the sensations in your body. Just wondering if Coco's going to set. She's a bit
busy.
So just, oh, I can't close the door because there's a big heavy kettlebell in the way. So yes, giving yourself these moments where you can just tune in and go, oh, I've got a tightness in my tummy that I had no idea was there. And then as you tune into the tightness, you might realize I'm actually feeling a bit stressed. Wow, okay, what's that about? That could be because my kids have just run off from the lunch table and it's a complete mess and no one's here to help me. And you know, just starting to notice your own internal emotional landscape, because then that gives you the information you need to start meeting your own needs and supporting your emotional journey through life. As you get those things in place, that will help you support your children too. I'm going to mute myself.
There we go.
Jane.
Okay.
How do I do that?
So yeah, so very much along the lines of what Bea has just been saying. As she was saying, I was like, oh yeah. So maybe doing like a boundaries audit, and when you've got some time on your own, or if you have a partner, with your partner, just getting a big piece of paper and being really curious about any clear rules or boundaries there were in your childhood that were kind of the deal breakers. So when you crossed that boundary, there was a big old consequence or some description, because often those are the things that in our children now really activate us, that we find, you know, we're fine with all these other things, but when they tell a lie or are struggling to, you know, share what you believe to be the truth, that's the one thing. Everything else you're like, oh, it's all good and it's all fine and okay, we need to, but then they do that one thing, because until you identify what the powerhouse behind your reaction is, it's going to keep showing up. So just to do it in a kind of truly curious, like we're not going to war on our parents, or, you know, unless that meets some need in you, but to be curious, because until you track back, it's going to keep showing up really, really powerfully. And then the other thing would be to explore this with the children, because if you have had, you know, several boundaries or lots of boundaries or rules, and they're used to it and they're used to it in school, to just chat through with them and say, okay, so this is, I've been learning or thinking, or however they would understand it, about when I say to you, you mustn't do that because this will happen. And now I'm just wondering if we can do this differently and what that might feel like, and have those little regular conversations, whatever your age of your children are. So if they're 16, obviously you use different language, but to say, you know, I'm going to try and just not be whatever, and then explore with you, or do something different, or what do you think? How does that sound? And they might just go, or look at you as if that aliens have clearly landed somewhere and nobody told me. And that's fine too. They may not be excited, or they may be a million different feelings, but just prepare them if you're going to make these changes, and prepare them for the fact that sometimes it's not going to go well, and you are going to leap back to boundaries, because, you know, when we've been doing it for a long time, it doesn't just happen like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I the way that I navigate that with my sons, who are 14 and almost 16, is that I will say to them, like, you know, I was having a think about how I handled whatever situation yesterday or today or whatever, and I think I got it wrong. I wished I'd done it like this. What do you think? You know, a lot of parents are scared to ask their kids, what do you think? You know, because if my boys turn around to me and say, yeah, mum, it was shit what you did.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're right. You are absolutely right. That for me is really valuable to hear that from them. A lot of the parents, you know, wouldn't feel that way at all. The other thing I just was sparked by you mentioning about teenagers, and one of the things that happens with my eldest son that I love is that every now and then, and I might have mentioned this before, every now and then I'll go in and I'll talk to, he's gaming with his friends, and I just say, oh, can I chat to you for a minute? And he puts himself on mute so he can still hear his friends, but he puts himself on mute so that his mic doesn't pick up our conversation. I get like one ear, he's got his friends in the other ear. Anyway, and then he'll chat to me, and something about whatever I'm talking to him about is directly related to him gaming and time with his friends. What he often does is he'll say, oh God, he'll put his mic back down. He said, guys, I'm putting you on with my mum. And he hands, I mean, the trust here is phenomenal. He hands his headphones over to me and gets me to talk to his friends. I had this amazing conversation with his gaming friends the other day, who, because Pete was really unsure about, my parents had treated us all to a takeaway. They were treating us to a takeaway at the weekend, which was wonderful. And so I was basically saying, I want us all to eat this takeaway together and not to feel rushed. I just want us to really enjoy it because Granny and Jampa are buying this and blah, blah. And Pete was saying, oh, but you know, this is when my friends are gaming and, you know, I don't want them to, I don't want to let them down. Anyway, so he handed the headphones to me and I said to them, I said, oh, guys, my mum and dad are treating us to a takeaway. I really want for Pete to be able to come and eat with us and not feel rushed. How does that affect you? I had this amazing conversation with his friends. And then we were kind of, you know, it was they were joking at times and things like this. And then we were joking about cyberbullying and all sorts of things, but we were actually covering so many subtle topics that came into this one situation where Pete was feeling uncomfortable about, you know, coming and having this relaxed time with family. And so in the end, I was able to say to his friends, so do you guys feel okay about, you know, Pete being able to walk away from the game? And they're like, yeah, it's fine. And I was like, brilliant. And I handed it back to Pete and I said, you know, do you feel all right now? And he was like, yeah, it's fine. And for me, that was so, like, it was such an expansive experience with my son, with his friends, compared to if I had gone in with, you know, we're getting the takeaway, you need to be downstairs by 7, and I want us to spend at least half an hour together.
Yeah.
There is the boundary, you know, and if you don't do that, then, well, you know, you won't get to eat your takeaway, or that's the last time I'm buying you a takeaway, or I'm going to turn the internet off, or, you know.
Brings that horrible energy into yucky. Yeah.
And then even if
and everyone would have been miserable. You'd have been miserable downstairs eating your takeaway. You'd have been, I know, and
even if he joined us, it would have been miserable for all of us.
Well, exactly. Okay, we've
got to go. Oh my God, we've run way over time.
We have.
The takeaway was delicious, and we had lovely.
Oh, don't tell me I'm desperate for a takeaway.
Get a takeaway.
I know, but I feel bad making people drive all the way here just for me.
It's supporting their business. They want your business. They're struggling.
Okay, I will, because I'm desperate for one. But I just, you know, it's like if there was 2 people, I wouldn't feel so bad. But I could order for 2.
You could order for 2. You could order for 10 and let that takeaway feed you for a week.
Oh my gosh. But okay,
no, I will. Your local businesses really want you to order, because at the moment.
Oh, okay. I've been a bit worried about making them.
No, at the moment they're
all their petrol and pay the driver. And do you think I was overthinking it?
I think you were overthinking it, and I think they would really appreciate your business.
Okay, I'm gonna do that.
We got to go. I am parched.
Oh, I know. I drank my tea like 3 years ago, and I got a big tea delivery the other day, so I'm all teed up, which is good. Yeah.
Amazingly, I don't actually need a wee, which is very unusual for me.
This is first.
I know. I haven't drunk enough water, and I can feel like literally in my throat is like.
Let's go sort these things out.
Right. Anyway, okay. Let's just, have you checked YouTube for comments? Okay, no more comments on YouTube. Brilliant. Right. How do we stop this on? Goodbye, YouTube.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
And do get in touch. Bye-bye.
Yeah.